Hey everybody, and welcome to another DashFight video. Today, we're going to be talking about balance patches. Mortal Kombat 1 had one recently that has been the talk of the entire community. It was a patch that seemed made specifically to assassinate Cyrax. The topic of balance patches is a touchy one, and one where there doesn't seem to be a consensus. Are they good? Are they bad? How often should they occur? How big should they be? These are all questions that we grapple with, and everyone sort of has a different answer. So let's talk about it for a bit. Depending on how long you've been around, you may or may not remember life before balance patches. Yes, there was indeed life before balance updates, and fighting games did thrive even in that era. In the early 90s, games in general were a complete package, and what you bought was what you owned till the next iteration came out. So in Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, for instance, you had Bison, with his insane chip damage on his Psycho Crusher, which could kill you if you only blocked. Bison also had some other tools, with his slide attack being perhaps his weakest. But the idea was that till this day, if you pick up Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, Bison is still a nightmare. You can check out some of Daigo's Kimono Michi events where Street Fighter 2 was featured to see what I'm talking about. And we'll put a link to it in the description. But then, games get stale and people move on to something else. So the answer back then was new versions of the same game with new characters, new mechanics, and bug fixes. Street Fighter 2 was particularly notorious for this, as there are at least 7 different iterations of the game, each one adding one feature or the other. Champion Edition brought Bison, Balrog, Sagat, and Vega into the game. Street Fighter 2 Turbo amped up the speed. Super Street Fighter added Cammy, Fei Long, T-Hawk, and DJ, and so on. Some credit Unreal Tournament as the first game to introduce patches. But one thing was clear: patches were a game changer. With patches, games were given more longevity as developers could create a new game within the same game. This upheld interest and enabled players to find new solutions with either new characters or through the balance changes. Patches are one of the ways to keep a game fresh. The world has become a place with a lot less patience than before, and with so many options for people in terms of the games they play, their favorite games need to keep freshening themselves to retain their interest. New characters could breathe life into a game, and better balance could literally save a game. Let's look at one of the best examples in recent times, Street Fighter V. When the much anticipated game was released in 2016, it had 16 characters, but barely much else. It was universally panned, and Capcom got an earful from the community. But thanks to great patches, by the time Street Fighter V's era ended, it was considered one of the most balanced games out there. Players had various characters to choose from, who were all viable in one way or another, and those who loved labbing the game had new things to try out. New combo routes were introduced, and the game's meta changed season by season. Another great advantage to patches is character representation. Tier lists dominate the conversation within the FGC, as the never-ending ranking of characters rumbles on for a game's lifespan. Patches ensure that no character is so dominant to the point where the game is no longer fun for the spectator. Street Fighter V also had some great examples. For instance, Cody was more or less a niche character until Champion Edition, where he got his V-Skill 2, and suddenly we started to see him do well in tournaments. By the end of Street Fighter V's lifecycle, there weren't many characters you could consider incredibly dominant. This was good for the game's development, and would ensure that Street Fighter V will be remembered fondly. As established earlier, patches are great. They vary gameplay, keep the game interesting, and even bring new players in to join the crowd. But are there too many patches? This is a difficult one to answer, as different games have different patch cycles. For instance, Mortal Kombat X had more patches than Pennywise had teeth, while games like Super Smash Bros. Melee never saw one, in the USA at least. Both MKX and Melee are considered pretty great games, so the cycles seem to work. But sometimes, you get calls for patches even when it isn't necessary. Mortal Kombat 1's recent patch, 1 month into the game, nerfed Cyrax, and while for the majority of people this was good news, the question needs to be asked: could NetherRealm have waited a bit to let the meta develop a bit more? A month isn't too long to get used to a fighting game, which is notorious for how long it takes to master. On the other hand, many have criticized Capcom's decision to wait for a year before patching the game, and while I understand why some might want to change, it seems a lot better to let people get into the game. I, for one, think that Capcom made the right decision on waiting to patch their game. Yes, I hear you over there screaming, what about JP? What about Ken? Well, how many of those characters are in Capcom Cup currently? There's one JP and 3 Kens. One more than the Lukes and DJs. This is where the concept of honers come in. In Core A Gaming's excellent video on honers and innovators, we learned that there are 2 types of players. Those who hone their craft till they can exploit every single thing the game has to offer, and the innovators who love to tinker with the game and are incentivized to do so with things like balance patches and new characters. Both sets of players are important to the scene, but the honers have been the ones to create the truly great moments in fighting game history. The infamous Evo Moment 37, Xian's insane run in 2013, or Infiltration against PR Balrog. These moments came as a result of players who grinded to the point where they knew everything about the game's mechanics. Those moments are what make the FGC so incredible, and are used as advertisements for the community. People have become gamers because of those moments, and that's why they are so important. You could argue that patches keep the more casual audience interested, and you wouldn't be wrong. It does help, but fighting games are made attractive by the professionals. They are the ones most affected by patches, and ensuring that there is a stable environment for them to continue to provide jaw-dropping moments should be a priority for fighting games. It goes without saying that fighting games should do their best to release the most balanced game possible before release. If anything game-breaking is discovered, an emergency patch must be deployed. Besides that though, fighting games should marinate. Players should be rewarded for long hours of training and perfect execution. Hardcore players should excel, and when that is missing, I don't think it serves the game well. So that's my opinion on the matter. But what do you think? Do you think games should see more patches? Or do you think that games should take the Street Fighter angle and wait a little bit before they patch their game? Let us know in the comments. But that's it for today's video, and for more thought-provoking articles and general news on all things FGC, check out our website. There's something there for everyone. And thank you for watching this video to the end, and we'll see you in the next one.